Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the eastern border. Well, the front's been a bit quiet lately, once again, which is why the episodes are a bit rare. However, there are two events, one of which is kind of happy and the other one is, well, actually really depressing and sad and terrible, that I'd like to talk about. Let's start with a more happy one. You see, Russian forces left Kherson, and I spoke about it recently, but, well, life continues there. See, currently, the Ukrainian authorities in the liberated part of the Kherson region have announced stabilization measures that are slated to last for several weeks. The measures will include a curfew from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. and police inspections of the newly liberated territory for remaining Russian soldiers. The first day after the Ukrainian forces reclaimed the territory, however, there was no curfew. Kherson residents celebrated the victory with soldiers from the UAF until late into the night. Police have also begun documenting evidence of war crimes committed by the Russian army. Currently, it's about 400 cases because it was under control for a long time and not going to get any prettier. Authorities also reported that demining the newly liberated territories will take multiple months, and I'm very inclined to believe them. You see, demining those things is a long process, and I know how much the Russians actually enjoy mining things for kids and everything. I've been there. Regional Military Administration head Yaroslav Yanushevich has asked local residents not to gather in crowded areas or in the center of the city, where demining operations will reportedly begin on November 14th. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, no journalists will be allowed into Kherson or other towns and villages in the region until at least their main sites and facilities are demined. The Ukrainian Interior Ministry has asked residents who have left the region not to come back until the stabilization measures are complete. Ukrainian intelligence initially reported that not all Russian soldiers who were on the right bank of the Dnipro River during occupation have crossed to the left bank. Officials initially reported that tens of thousands of Russian soldiers were clustered around river crossings. Later, when it became clear that there were no crowds of Russians along the river, Ukrainian authorities reported that Russian soldiers wearing civilian clothing could be hiding in Kherson and in other areas on the river's right bank. Ukrainian intelligence officials demanded that anyone who joined the Russian army surrender, vowing to destroy anybody who resists. By the evening of November 13th, there had been no reports of Russians surrendering en masse or being destroyed. Russian war correspondents, well, put that in air quotes, who were in Kherson until November the 11th, have claimed that all Russian units that were stationed on the Dnipro's right bank have actually fled. Meanwhile, there's joy to my heart because videos of civilians who are joyfully greeting Ukrainian soldiers have been widely broadcast in the Ukrainian media. You can check them out, it's just glorious, because apparently you could be jailed for having a Ukrainian flag while the Russian occupation was there, and it was there for, like I said, a very, very long time. And there's a video with an old lady, for example, digging up her Ukrainian flag from under bricks in her garden and all that stuff. It's really good viewing, and you probably should check that one out on YouTube. Ukrainian authorities reported that phone and internet service from Ukrainian operators is in the process of being restored. According to Yaroslav Yanushevich, mobile phone service from the Ukrainian company Kyivstar is currently accessible at and around the regional administration building. On November the 1st, 10 days before the Russian forces retreated from the right bank of the Dnipro, Russian occupation authorities reported that 100% of the Kherson region was covered by Russian service providers. Now, that's probably not going to be very useful now. Though, in the weeks before Russia retreated, there were numerous reports on social media sites of people losing service. The Ukrainian taxi service, Uklon, has resumed service in Kherson, while Ukraine's National Postal Service announced that it will resume operating on the city in the next week. The energy company DTEK reported on Saturday that Russian troops, quote, destroyed the entire energy system, end quote, in the Kherson region before their retreat, and that restoring it could take up to a month. On Sunday, Ukrainian Railways announced a charity sale of tickets for the first trains to Kherson, and 4 still occupied Ukrainian cities: Mariupol, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Simferopol. According to the company, buying the tickets is a symbol of faith in Ukrainian armed forces, and the tickets to the occupied cities can be used for, quote, immediately after the occupation. The National Railway Company also said that it has begun evaluating the damage done to railway infrastructure in the Kherson region and plans to restore train service to Kherson as soon as possible, though it did not provide an estimate for when that might be. And finally, a bit of weird news. Also widely discussed in the wake of Russia's retreat was the theft of animals from the Kherson Zoo. On Friday, the pro-Russian poet Anna Dolgaev wrote on Telegram, quote, "The only good news is that my comrade managed to steal a raccoon from the Kherson Zoo." And this is where it gets really dark once again, because, well, this is the eastern border, and, we get dark quite often. See, Russian media outlets reported the so-called evacuation of animals from the Kherson Zoo in early November, including 7 raccoons, a llama, and llamas are at least always funny, a donkey, a wolf, pheasants, a guinea fowl, and peacocks. Oleg Zubkov, the owner of a safari park in Crimea, was responsible for taking the animals, and in the video where he takes the raccoon, he literally, pulls it off its cage by its tail, very brutally and violently. And that's not a surprise, because in 2020, Zubkov was fined after a lion he owned bit a woman, and in 2022, he was sentenced to jail after one of his tigers bit a 1-year-old. In October, his sentence was, of course, overturned because he has a lot of money and it's Russia we're talking about, and he was released from his own for his own recognizance. But that was happy news, as happy as the ending of this could be. Because honestly speaking, there's a bit of very dark stuff happening right now, and I don't even know how to exactly cover this. But I suppose we'll make it through. I just want to remind you that we do have a Patreon page, patreon.com/theeasternborder. We would really appreciate if you would, throw the show a buck. A buck a show, that's all we ask, like, they used to say in Dan Carlin's episodes. Also, if you're in for a one-time donation, we're still gathering funds and everything necessary to go back to Ukraine on January. So, hey, if you can help, that'd be great. But, that's absolutely not mandatory. We're just happy that everything's going on. We've also been losing a lot of followers on Twitter since the takeover by Elon Musk. I bet it's been like bots or something. Been a weird situation there. So that moves us back from our 25,000 goal. But hey, if you're in Twitter and not following us, hey, give us a try. We're not the worst channel to follow. I post there now and then when I'm not extremely busy with real life stuff or not making these episodes. So hey, could be worth it. And also, that's the best place where to message me if you have any other messages, because I read that the most. But now, return to the show and to probably one of the darkest stuff that I've been reporting over a prolonged period of time. You see, a former prisoner who fought for our buddies at PMC Wagner and then surrendered to Ukrainian armed forces, he was murdered as a traitor. And the murder was filmed. On the evening of November the 12th, the Telegram channel Grey Zone, which is connected with private military company Wagner, posted a video which allegedly shows the murder of former prisoner Yevgeny Nuzhin. Nuzhin was recruited. He was among those who was recruited there in the prisons to fight for Russia and Ukraine. He apparently surrendered and in an interview with Ukrainian journalists said he was prepared to fight for Kiev. Now, whether or not he was prepared to fight for Kiev, that's debatable because of all this stuff. But Nuzhin, he was sentenced to prison for 20 years in 1998 and got for a murder with aggravated assault as well. And he got added 4 years for an attempted escape attempt. Well, that comes from the prisons. But he apparently either was forced to or just signed a deal with Prigozhin and his Wagner company. And that was a bit of a weird situation. And also, I wouldn't really believe what he says in the channels just because the prisoners in the Soviet prison system, they have a lot of psychology knowledge by themselves. At any rate, Grey Zone, the channel that I read often, presents the murder as punishing a traitor. On the morning of November 13th, Wagner founder Yevgeny Prigozhin called the clip excellent directorial work. The press service of Prigozhin's company, Concord, quotes him as saying, quote, in this show it's clear that Nuzhin did not find happiness in Ukraine, but met unkind but fair people. Yeah, they take pride in this stuff. But what would you expect? I mean, by now, really shouldn't be surprised. And that's the thing, that's the video, and I'm going to describe some really, really terrible stuff, and I'm really happy that I don't have to show you the clip because this is an audio format, but this is going to be brutal, okay? So, just bear with me. In the video, Yevgeny Nuzhin's head is taped to bricks. He says the following words, quote, "I am Nuzhin, Yevgeny Anatolievich, born in 1967. I went to the front in order to cross to the Ukrainian side and fight against Russia. On October the 4th, I accomplished my plan of crossing over to the Ukrainian side. On November 11, 2022, I was in the street in Kiev when I was hit on the head, as a result of which I lost consciousness. I woke up in this basement where I was told I would be judged." Now, the fact about him being in Kiev, that's debatable, but carrying on. The fact is that after that, a person whose face is not visible beats Nuzhin in the head with a sledgehammer, crushing it and killing him. Again, Wagner Group and sledgehammers. They sell merch with this, with a sledgehammer on it. Since they also fought in Syria, and over there, they crushed what they called a Syrian spy with a sledgehammer as well. It's just awful. Really awful. Fragments from Nuzhin's interview with Ukrainian journalist Yuri Botusov are inserted at the beginning of this clip. In them, this former prisoner says, "When this whole commotion started, I decided for myself that once I arrived, I'd surrender any way I could and try to get here. And I would like to fight for the Ukrainians, that's why I surrendered." Presumably, Nuzhin was returned to the Russian forces' location in a prisoner exchange. After Ukraine reported the return of 45 prisoners from Russia, Anastasia Kasherovna, pro-war commentator and former advisor to Vyacheslav Volodin, reported that Wagner Group has its own fund for exchanges and, quote, "our own fighters weren't there." Ukrainian authorities have called on Russians to surrender, guaranteeing their return in accordance with all conventions and promising not to exchange those who don't wish to return. Since the beginning of September, voluntary surrender has been a criminal offense in Russia. Yevgeny Nuzhin's death has not been officially confirmed. Law enforcement and investigations have not commented on the possible murder of a Russian citizen. Nuzhin's interview, whom I totally wouldn't believe because, like I said, they're prisoners there, with Yuri Botusov was published on September the 6th. Online publication Важные истории, or Important Stories, confirmed that the man in the video was a former prisoner in the penal colony number 3 in the Ryazan region. Nuzhin said he'd been sentenced to 25 years for murder during a skirmish in 1999 and allegedly got another 4 years for attempting to escape. According to Nuzhin, the businessman Yevgeny Prigozhin flew to their penal colony over the summer in order to recruit prisoners for the war in Ukraine. Nuzhin claimed in the interview that he'd decided a long time ago to surrender and wanted to fight on the Ukrainian side in the Russian Legion, which probably doesn't exist and that I really don't believe him. He also said that he has relatives in Ukraine. News broke this summer that, Wagner was recruiting prisoners for the war in Ukraine, and, well, Wagner's founder, Prigozhin, was personally visiting penal colonies. And important part is that, according to everything and what I've seen myself, videos circulated in September where he promised that prisoners would be pardoned, but also warned that they'd be executed for deserting. And now we have a video with this execution, which again, horrifyingly involves a sledgehammer, and it's not a nice thing to watch, which I don't really recommend. This war is complex, and I mean, who's involved in this exchange, and why did this happen, and maybe Wagner Group exchanged their own. This is going to have to be investigated. I have no answers here. It's a horrific event that happened, and sadly, to those Ukrainian officials that facilitated this exchange, although this guy was a former prisoner and all that whatnot, it's a bit scary. Because, seeing people being bashed their heads in with a sledgehammer is not a nice view. I hope we have better news in the future once again. At any rate, this will be it for today. And, again, please just watch the videos of Kherson. They're really heartwarming. After all these dark news, they truly somewhat restore my faith in humanity, although many other dark things tend to destroy it. And, as usual, remember, happiness is mandatory. До свидания, товарищи.